Welcome back, guys. This is Mr. Cybert again, coming back with you, building on the last video I did, which was an exercise with maps. I showed how you can put two students' maps together and work on that critical thinking so that they can look at interpretation and why maps are their own visualization of something on paper and why we have differences, and that helps with the interpretation part. But I wanted to continue this week looking specifically at the next part of the map building concept, and that's specifically dealing with grids. So what I have for you are two sides. I have one, the assignment that's going to be the culminating assignment, which is on the right. So if you want to ignore that for now, and on the left is the more important part, which is going to be looking at a grid, and we're going to start in baby steps. I'm working with 6th graders right now. You can do this with 7th graders, but I find it with the 6th graders because it helps with the integration of math. As you can see, I'm a social studies teacher by heart, but as you can see on the screen, clearly this is math related, but we're going to apply it to maps, which is going to be the social studies component. So without further ado, how do we do this? Number one, how to read a grid. They should by now, and if they don't, you can introduce it to them. But I found that the 6th graders by now understand the X and Y. So if you see my cursor, we have the X here and we have the Y coordinates. Once they establish that, now we have to figure out how do we get the 4-figure grid. So using this, what I did with my students is using arrows, and I was standing at the board, but I'm going to be doing this on my computer, is to show them I always start with one letter that I give them. And then once they see the pattern, then they can go ahead and show me what they've learned. So I started with the letter S. So if you see I'm circling the letter S here, one way to do this on the X-axis is if I draw an arrow from 12 to 13, you're always going to go with the number before, okay? And that is going to give us our first coordinates for the 4-figure grid, which is 1, 2 here, okay? Then what I did is I told them to do the same exact thing for when we're identifying the numbers which to use on the y-axis, which we have 0, 0, 0, 1. We're going to go with the number before, which is 0, 0, which will give us 1, 2, 0, 0. And that is your 4-figure grid for the letter S. At this time, I'll ask them to work with a partner or in small groups to give me letters P, Q, and R. We will go over those. If there is any confusion, then what I can do is add letters. So on the board, I might put a dot here, put a dot here, here, and here. We'll add 4 more dots. And instead of calling those PQRS, we might call them TUVW, okay? And then we continue this exercise. So if you find your students don't get the 4-figure grid the first time, try it again the next time with an additional 4 dots, okay? That's the second practice. If you're finding they're still struggling, then what I would have you do is have them switch with a partner, add more dots to this 4-figure grid, and then practice again for a third practice, okay? Try to obviously get around, work with each student individually. Those students who are struggling, pair them, you know, do what you can to help the students, but try your best to make this minimalized in 3 practices. I would say for me, it took literally about 5 minutes, but I would say spend no more than 15 to 20 minutes on this. That way you can move on to the more difficult one, which is right here, and that is going to give us the 6-figure grid. Now for this grid, because it's a little bit more complex, how to introduce it? Well, we have here, if you look at my cursor, I'm circling the 12, and then I'm circling the 13. Highlight what I did here in class was I drew an arrow highlighting how this entire box represents this, pull it up here, this box here, from 12 to 13 represents this 12 to 13 here. So what we're doing is we're taking this box with the letter S in it, and we're making it enlarged. And then what I did was I said to imagine counting 10 units. And I drew that on the board with my cursor, but here we have them already highlighted, okay? And instead of doing the 4-figure grid, what we're gonna be doing here is the 6-figure grid. in the same pattern. But what I would recommend you do is get a yardstick or a ruler. That way they can get almost an exact measurement. Yeah, and I found that it worked that way. This one is a little bit more difficult for the students, but again, I would minimalize it to at least 3 practices, no more than that. If additional, so be it. But an easy way to do this is to show them it's the same pattern. So we're going to start with the x-axis. So 6 numbers, we know wherever, or we're going to start with the letter S. We're going to start with the 1, 2. Okay. Now we need to find the next number, the 3rd number that's going to be on the x-axis. And as students can see, kind of, if they're looking at the board, or what I did is I provided them a sheet that they were able to work with, they can visualize that the S is more aligned with the 4. And that's going to be our number here. So 1, 2, 4 is going to be our x-axis. Now we got to figure out the y. Just like we did for the 4-figure grid, it's going to start with 0, 0, because we have those numbers here. I'm circling it with my cursor. Okay, and as you go up, you're going to see that it aligns with 7. Now, students may need to use the ruler to see that, and that's fine. So that's going to give us 7. Okay. And what I did to make it a little theatrical with the students is I sang a little song with them. Since we have S, why don't we finish the alphabet? So around here on their paper or on the board, I wrote TUVWXYZ. Okay, you can do this with the amount of students that you have in class, and I would start with probably those stronger students, the students that are able to pick it up, and then just add a comma here, or if you're doing it on the board, have them come up and start going ahead and measuring these 6-figure grids. Again, 3 practices with this should be enough. Before they come to the board, I would have them work in smaller groups and pairs. That way they're a bit more confident when they come to the board, not to put them on the spot. But if you have a student who gets it right away and that can come up and they can help you instruct the students, I would definitely take advantage of that. I've done that before. And so any case, 3 steps with that. Start with showing them where the letter S is, then add a couple letters to it, okay? If need be, that 3rd practice, then have students put dots on here, wherever on their worksheet, okay? Switch with another student, and then they have to find the 6-figure grid. That'll give you your 3rd practice. That's a way to kind of differentiate and kind of build on the learning. Anyway, it worked for me. I did it twice, and they picked it up rather quickly. So then we were ready for the last step. And that last step is applying your graph to a map. And right here, I have a map. And I came up with a list of 8 questions. These you can use for your own exercise if you want. I made these up on my own, and what I had done was applied everything from scale to symbols to map key to directions using cardinal directions, and then giving me what we learned today, the 4-figure and the 6-figure grid. So as you can see, I start with the number 1 and what direction. They have to understand the north, east, north, west, and then obviously the 8 cardinal directions. So wherever you have a direction, they have to look at it and then follow it. Okay, and for those students that are struggling, work with them, use the finger technique, point to it, and then follow it. Usually that helps out pretty good here. Then number 2 and number 3, the 4-figure grid. That one we worked on earlier. They should by now be able to understand that they have to use the x-axis first with the y-axis to get the 4 numbers. Okay. The number 5 is the 6-figure one. That one was a little bit challenging for the students, especially because I provided the A through D. Okay. This time they had to use the map key along with the map. So for example, the one that I noticed today, the campsite by Castle Point was letter A. So they had to go to their map key and find a campsite, okay? And then they had to find Castle Point. So as I look here and I see Castle Point, okay, Castle Point is the place, but what we're looking for is the campsite. That challenges them to say, okay, the campsite here. That way when they do the 6-figure grid, their number is more precise. That was a little bit challenging for the students. So make sure you differentiate between, if you're using a map like this, the symbols and a city or a place or something next to the symbol. That way they don't just focus on the city, but they have to find something that's next to that city, place, etc. Okay. In addition, the actual distance between, this was an opportunity to work on scale. If you see as I'm circling it in the bottom right-hand corner, again, they use their rulers. It's excellent to integrate that math, helps out with the math teacher, and also it applies for the geography skills that they need to do with map making. And finally, I did number 8. I did with them I'm going to be doing with them, I should say, in another lesson. But number 7, how far would you travel by rail? This was a little bit challenging for students. This was the most difficult one because they had to go from one place to the next. So from Woodson to Bridgetown, if you notice here, Woodson I have right here, and then Bridgetown right here. So literally with a ruler, and I had them do this in pairs first. They had to measure the rail all the way to Bridgetown, and then I had them do it again to check their answer, okay? And sure enough, they were able to come up with the correct answer, which worked out pretty well. So you had a couple of things here. You had one introducing the grid, the 4-figure grid, to be specific, then the 6-figure grid, and then applying it to map skills, where they're able to use a map key, scale, compass, again, building on those map skills, what I'm gonna be doing from here. Now I can select something outside of school. Either I'm going to be doing something where they're going to be making a map from their home to the school, maybe from one place, their home to another place that they like, the mall. What you want to do is expand those map skills. So something outside of just their bedroom or the classroom, which are 2 maps that I had them do before, to build on those map skills. And so as long as you keep building on those map skills, then you can expect some success. And I hope that this video works out for you. Let me know in the feedback if you have any comments, and we'll continue to build on those skills. Take care.